Welcome back, everybody, to These Aren't the Nerds You're Looking For. Lorenzo is sitting here with...
Kevin Horde.
How you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, man. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. I have been all over the place. I've been traveling, still catching up from moving. I think Kevin can see a box right behind me in my Skype feed.
Yep.
Life just getting in the way. But, you know, we get back together when we can and chat Star Wars. There's a lot to chat about.
There's a lot. There's probably more than we can get into in this episode.
Yes, for sure. This episode, we are specifically going to be sticking with Star Wars Resistance, The Engineer. This is Season 2, Episode 5 of Star Wars Resistance, which aired on November 3rd, 2019.
And you had this down as the 25th episode, correct?
Yes.
And I've got it down as the 26th.
That whole conundrum again.
Yeah, I recently conceded. I think at the beginning of this season, I decided that I would concede to the fact that the Recruit, the first episode that came out that was Season 1, Episode 1, was actually Season 1, Episode 1, Season 1, Episode 2, and I will finally give over to that 100% since Disney Plus is out, and Disney Plus does have Season 1 of Star Wars Resistance, and it is listed as The Recruit Part 1 and The Recruit Part 2.
Oh, I haven't even looked at that yet. So are they broken up as two individual episodes?
It is.
Or is it? Oh, is it really?
Yep.
Weird. I have not looked at that at all. Yeah.
So I'm interested to kind of rewatch those two and see how the first one ends and the second one begins.
Right. For sure.
But
All
yeah,
right.
that's an update there. Lorenzo and I were kind of talking about this off mic, and I said I'll bring it up and we'll get to the bottom of it. But yeah, that means that this one is episode 26 overall. And according to my math, that means that total we will have 40 of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And we're cruising right along through season 2, man.
Yeah, still playing a little bit of catch up here.
Yeah,
but
we'll get there.
No worries.
On the main feed, we've had a ceasefire in the Clone Wars for a little bit, but we'll be getting back to that as well. So
for sure,
there's like we said, Ben, there's a lot of stuff going on in Star Wars. We've got weekly new Star Wars Resistance. Now we've got the Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
Shit. What's the new game? Jedi Fallen Order.
Fallen Order, which is getting great reviews, and I have not played it because I went and bought Death Stranding, which is awesome. I do love it. I do not regret that decision. But it was more sidetrack based on previous Star Wars games we've gotten in the Disney era.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna sit back and wait for the reviews on this one because after the Battlefront 2 fiasco, I was just not ready to just pre-order game. I don't generally pre-order games too much if can be helped. And Fallen Order was when I was waiting on behind, and it's a busy season for video games right now between Death Stranding, Pokemon Sword Shield, Fallen Order, Untitled Goose Game.
Right.
So
yeah, video games that I play typically come in cartridge form.
Right.
So there's that. But if you ever do get Fallen Order, man, play it for a while. We can talk about it. You can fill me in.
We can talk about it. That'd be fun. I'm hearing good things for sure. Hopefully, come Black Friday. That's what I'm waiting on to see if any good deals for Fallen Order show up. So
sure.
Hopefully, Pokemon Sword Shield too. Anyways, getting back to Star Wars Resistance: The Engineer. This episode was directed by Bosco Ng, written by Sarah Carbiner, Erica Rusby. Those are the two writers. I'm going to do the full recap as I tend to do on the Star Wars Resistance episodes. That said, this is your spoiler warning. I will reveal all plot points of this episode. Ready to get into it?
Ready.
We start with Captain Doza concerned about the scanners of the Colossus. They are offline. Neeku's fixing stuff. Neeku fixes the scanners. They pick up a distress call. There are concerns of a trap. Kaz will go investigate. He brings Sinara along. They do find a lone survivor. Her name is Nina, Nena, like as in Nena of the 99 Nuff Balloons, folks. She is a computer engineer whose ship was attacked by the First Order. We do learn that her first name is Nina Vakasa Nalor. She's a very talented engineer, as we figure out via montage. Her and Neeku go through the Colossus, fixing up a bunch of stuff. The pirates ask for help as well in fixing a few things. Nina has an aversion. Nina discovers that the pirates are stealing half of the Colossus powers and rerouting it to their ships. Nina accuses the pirates outright of stealing this power. Kaz offers to investigate this further. Sonara finds Kaz investigating the pirates. We jump over to Neeku and Nina fixing a few more things in the ship. We get a good little bit of backstory that we've never gotten before on Neeku. We find out that his parents are bantha herders, and they sold a prized bantha calf so that Neeku could go off and be an engineer. Nina was captured by pirates and turned into a hut slave, so we get backstory on her as well. Sonara suspects that Nina is lying. Sonara and Kaz go and investigate Nina's ship. They do find out that Nina has been tracking the Colossus for the First Order. Kaz goes to tell Neeku the truth. Neeku does not believe. Nina contacts the First Order. Kaz and Neeku chase after Nina, who shoots back at them. Therefore, Neeku sees that, yes, Kaz was telling the truth. Neeku and Kaz must undo the various fixes that Nina has done to reroute power back to the Colossus. Nina did, in fact, fix the ship, but fixed it in a way that didn't really fix the ship. A Star Destroyer shows up. Ties are dispatched. Kaz gets things mostly fixed through another quick little montage of scenes. Kaz convinces the pirates to cut their power supply to give it back to the Colossus to get all power back to all systems. Neeku fixes one last thing, and the Colossus is fully operational and jumps to hyperspace. We get a quick little scene of Pyre and Tyranny agreeing to execute Nina if they do find her. Actually, I feel like I skipped a whole bunch somewhere in here. Okay, hang on. Nina, okay.
You're pretty good.
Yeah, let's see. We get a little scene of Sonara and Nina fighting. Mm-hmm. Nina gets on her ship. That's where I skipped one line there. So,
it's all good.
Basically, that's it. Cue loud music. Cue fanfare.
Yeah. Soft enter fanfare.
There have been a lot of soft fanfares in this season.
It is. So, it's kind of weird, like,
especially in this episode. I get it, but this episode ends. Okay, so even though my last line was about Pyre and Tyranny, there is another epilogue scene of Kaz and Neeku kind of talking about best friends and who Neeku's friends are, and it's very upbeat and pleasant. I just didn't make note of it because there's no real like story bearing to this episode per se. But there's no reason to go from like friendly conversation to like it's
the whole theme music for this series is weird because it doesn't hit like as hard as like on the Clone Wars. When you cue loud music on the Clone Wars, man, it's like boom, here it is. Right. And you get the logo, like
Iris in, and
on this series it's real soft like all the time, and especially season 2 it's like even softer, where there will be like another musical cue and then it just blends into the theme. I don't even know. It's hard for me to pick out the theme for this series in general.
Yeah, because it's a different, like, it's kind of like rotating through motifs, sort of, right?
Right.
So it's a curious choice. That should we get into the episode proper?
Sure. I would like
talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to bring up one thing, like one detail that you absolutely missed that I think is integral to this entire series is when OP Pit finally gets back his floor scrubber.
Yep, I did skip over that in the montage of Nina fixing things.
Yeah,
Yes.
when Nina was fixing things, like, I guess they got some door open or some shit. I don't really know, but OP Pit was there, and he got his floor scrubber back, and man, this guy was happy.
He was so happy. I love OP Pit.
He's such a
love
good
OP Pit.
character.
Yeah.
He's so fun. I am waiting for the next Star Wars Celebration that I can attend, because you know that there's going to be some OP Pit
I hope
cosplayers
so.
there, man.
I really hope so.
And the real good
Next year,
ones
we'll see.
will have a floor scrubber.
Oh, man. But yeah, so what are your feelings on this introduction of a new character? Oh, by the way, Nina is voiced by one Megan Falcone, who is, if you were unaware, married to Josh Brenner in real life.
Yeah, I was not aware of that to begin with. I did come across that information afterwards. I think it was in like the what do they call it? Like the bucket notes or whatever.
Yeah, like if you kind of click around Wikipedia.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called. But yeah, so Nina and Neeku do have pretty good chemistry together in this episode. I think it's nice that we do get to hear a little bit more information about Neeku's past, and it's worked well into the script of this thing where Nina is talking to Neeku, and Neeku's talking about himself, and he's like, wow, it kind of feels good to talk about myself. And she's like, what, your friends never ask about you? And he's like, oh no, Kaz is always too busy talking about himself and the First Order and how he personally has met General Leia Organa, and like Neeku seems proud of Kaz for like the things that Kaz has done. And Nina really, like, she's kind of taken aback by this, and she's like, wow, it sounds like he just really wants to talk about himself, like maybe he's not even really that good of a friend or whatever. I think some of the events in this episode are pretty eye-opening to Neeku himself, and I like that. He does often come off as, I mean, he's Neeku, you know. He's kind of in his own little world. He's got his peculiarities to him.
For sure.
And this whole episode is kind of structured, not from his point of view, but I think it's structured from his personality. Does that make sense?
I understand that for sure.
So, yeah. Questions that I have off the top are, why Doza and Yeager are just kind of sitting around waiting for Neeku and Kaz to fix shit. Right. Doza's like, I don't know, Yeager, like, are they up to the challenge? And Yeager's like, oh, don't worry, like, Neeku's the best engineer we got. And up until this point, he's never been described as an engineer. He's been a mechanic. They're both mechanics.
Yeah.
So they're doing their best. In this episode, definitely there is a development of Kaz where he's not necessarily just a bumbling protagonist.
I'll agree with that.
He is developing confidence and competence. And that's nice. Neeku still has his like technical ability and wherewithal of task-oriented accomplishment, even when Kaz is kind of hindering that, because Kaz is more like laser focused. Like at the beginning of the episode, Kaz is like hitting buttons on a control panel, like, ooh, I'm gonna fix this, I'm gonna fix this. And Neeku's like, hey man, I can use your help, just hand me that tool. And Kaz is like, hang on, let me hit these buttons. And it's kind of awkward scene where Neeku has to like stretch to reach the spanner or whatever, and then fixes his deal, and then just gets up behind Kaz and like punches some buttons and fixes whatever Kaz is working on. that is what sparks this communication. Yeager is suspicious.
For sure. Yes.
Neeku brings up the fact that, hey, we're in deep space. Like, the chance of another ship coming along is pretty small. If we don't help her, she's probably going to die out there.
Right.
Kaz offers to help. He's like, I'll go. And there's a funny little interchange where Yeager's like, okay, take somebody that's good with a blaster. Kaz is like, I'm good, man. I've been practicing. I'm getting better. Yeah. He still takes Sonara, and Sonara totally knows why he's taking her.
Exactly. Yeah.
But Neeku has this comment. He's like,
I was about to ask you this
send
too.
Kaz. I don't need to sleep.
Yep. I was going to bring that up for sure.
Neeku is very literal.
So I don't think he needs sleep, but has this been established with his species, or is it just him?
I don't know. That was my question. Like, do Neekto need to sleep?
I don't know. It's so weird.
It is weird. That is something that makes me want to dive down a Wikipedia rabbit hole of what does sleep mean in the Star Wars universe, and who needs sleep,
right,
and what species don't, and all this other stuff. Man, when I saw that, I was like, okay, I need to pause this, which I didn't, and I need to dive into this and actually find out.
But just thinking back, have we ever seen, we've seen a lot of these characters resting, right? Or being awoken from slumber, or discussing about how tired they are.
Yeah, for sure.
Has Neeku ever expressed being tired even? I don't know.
Think so.
Do I have a bad memory? I'm sure it's happened somewhere and I'm just forgetting, but this is in sitting down and talking with you and, only researching so much before we got into this. I had just seen this episode not too long ago and had this thought, but yeah, it's just one of those things. It's especially in the era of retconning now, right?
Right.
Where retconning still has to work retroactively, right?
Right.
Where it's with some things it's twist endings, right? Twist endings are one thing. Spoiler alert, Sixth Sense, the twist ending was designed into the rest of the movie, right?
Right. And it works well.
It works so darn well. You go back, you can rewatch that movie, and it works even better the second time, right? Doesn't undo the rest of the movie.
Right.
That's how you know you have a good twist. And then there are either drops of new information or, retcons, retroactive continuity. So,
right.
The Neeku doesn't need to sleep.
This doesn't really feel like a retcon to me, though. It just feels like a little detail. And I would be interested to know whether or not it's a trait of the Nikto or if it's just Neeku in general. Right. And I would imagine that he probably needs some form of sleep, some amount of sleep, but there are certain people out there that sleep less than others.
Right.
Personally, I've been doing a kitchen remodel, right?
Yes.
So for the past, 3-4 months, I've been sleeping on average maybe 4 or 5 hours a night, and I'm good with that. I still work my 50 hours a week at work, and I sleep between 1 and 5, 2 and 6, 1 and 6 a.m. and that's what I get, and that's good. I'm okay with that. I can function. I continue on.
You're a stronger man than I am.
Just different. Wouldn't say stronger. That's kind of the way that I imagine Neeku and what he's saying. It's also really hard to tell when is day, when is night. So, scientifically speaking, your circadian rhythm would have to be all fucked up, right? Because it's not like there's a nighttime on like a bedtime on the Colossus while they're in space, and for for any deep space ship, right? For that matter, could you imagine like Grand Moff Tarkin being like, "Okay, it's time to go to sleep now. We're gonna set the lights low." Like Death Star goes into sleep mode.
Right.
That's a 24/7 beast. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And the Colossus is probably the same.
It's like being on the interior of a cruise ship because you can afford like a porthole view, right?
Right.
Like the lights will always be on in that goddamn hallway, right?
Right.
Like that doesn't change.
Right.
But yeah, this was like, yeah, that like this is why I kind of go back between calling it a retcon or just like new information dump, right? Where I'm just like, where did this come from and why?
It is a really interesting tidbit of information.
Yes.
That is intriguing. I guess I will just put it that way. Hopefully we learn more about that later. I don't know.
I don't know if we will, but yeah. How do you feel about Nina?
I think it was really nice that Nina was a Nikto as well. I think that Sonara had it right when she was like, if she's such an excellent engineer, like, why couldn't she fix her ship? Like, Sonara saw through her immediately.
Right.
And I feel like Yeager of season 1 absolutely would have as well. I get why Neeku does not. I kind of get why Kaz doesn't.
Yeah.
Doza probably should have been a little more apprehensive. In the end, it's a little surprising to me that the two head guys in charge were just like, okay, whatever. Because
go fix the ship. I think they were just happy that systems were coming back on to some degree. I find it more curious that like her fixes Neeku didn't notice in the first go around.
I thought that as well. Like,
yeah,
I feel like he should have been catching on to what was going on, and maybe it would have been a little bit better character development for him to have his trusting nature in the beginning. Totally okay, because that's Neeku, that's what he does. But have him figured out along the way, maybe not have Sonara do it.
Right.
Sonara was a good info dump character to get to the bottom of things and kind of kickstart Act 3 of this thing. I didn't have a problem with that. But, there could have been a little bit more character development as far as Neeku goes. We did get some backstory from him. He did kind of learn a couple of lessons here, but for him to be able to simultaneously figure this thing out along the way, because she even tells him, like, there's a moment where she's talking about the case blind or whatever it is, and she says to him, yeah, but Neeku, I didn't come here to fix things. And he's like, ha 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 ha, like, then you're doing a terrible job. And she says something to him, and he says, we're almost done. And she basically says, you have no idea.
Right.
Because, like, what he means is we're almost complete fixing things. He says we're almost done. And she takes that double entendre or implies the double entendre where, like, the Colossus is almost done because she knows that she's going to turn them over to the First Order.
Right. Yeah. You bring up a good point about Sonara, though, because, like, I felt it, but in the third act, for sure, we get that interesting little scene where she's kind of waiting by Nina's ship to intercept her, I guess, as Nina's going to make a run for it. And we get like a tiny little fight scene between Nina and Sonara, but it lasts like, I don't know,
it's
10
like
seconds.
It is a handful of punches, shall we say.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I was happy it was there.
But I agree with you. Like, if it had just shifted to be more Neeku versus Nina centric, it feels like this episode would have been just that much stronger. And I didn't think about it in those terms until you mentioned it.
Yeah.
To put it on Neeku to make these discoveries rather than
it would definitely make
Kaz.
like the betrayal. I won't say stronger, but like his emotional reaction to the betrayal even stronger, and he has a pretty strong emotional reaction. Like when Kaz goes to Neeku and is like, "Hey, this is what's going on," he was like, "Ha ha ha, friend! I see what you're doing. You don't think you're my best friend anymore. And while she is far superior to you in many ways, you are still my best friend." And he's like bluntly honest, but Neeku and Kaz are like good buddies, and it's the kind of thing you can say to your friend, right? And Neeku thinks Kaz is trying to pull one over on him, calls it a ruse, all this stuff. And Nina runs off, right? And so they go to follow her, and then she just spills her guts.
Right.
And she's running and shooting, and Kaz is ducking out of the way, and they've got some quips back and forth. And when Neeku realizes it, he pulls an Obi-Wan walking into the line of fire and just walks out. And she doesn't fire at him because they do have a connection.
Yep.
And he takes that shit hard, man. Momentarily. He's able to get back to like the task at hand. I feel like it was an emotionally strong moment in this episode. Should things be different and he figured out on his own? Here's a question for you. Would he confront her and say, "Hey, I know what you're up to," and give her the opportunity to bail? Or would he, would he go to Kaz and say, "Hey, I think this is what's going on"? Or like, how would that play out?
I kind of like the idea of, okay, if the theme of this episode is trusting your friends, but also being open to trusting strangers, right? I kind of like the idea of going to Kaz first, right?
Okay.
Because there's like this other weird line between Kaz and Sonara too. Wasn't it somewhere in the plan where when Kaz and Sonara find out, Kaz goes to tell Neeku, what was Sonara doing? Wasn't she supposed to go tell Yeager and
No, she was
Doza?
staying at the ship because what happened is they figured it out. Like Kaz goes to try to figure out, or he's going to disconnect the power that the pirates are, they think are sucking power from the ship, diverting it to themselves. So he goes to unhook their power supply, and he's got that little funny thing of, "Ooh, nothing suspicious about all of these giant power cords here."
Right.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
That's when Sonara confronts him, and she's like, No, I installed the ship myself. That is not what's happening. And he's like, "No, that's what Nina said." And Sonara says to him, "Yeah, and who's been messing with the power? Nina." Right. And then they decide to go and investigate her ship, and they figure out what the truth is. And then she says, "I'm going to stay here." And he's like, "I'm going to go warn everybody." Okay. And he does his arm flaily run with CB-23. And then they have this whole episode is full of like these little like conversational Easter eggs. Like he's talking to CB-23 and CB's like, "Yeah, Neeku is a very trusting guy." And Kaz is like, "Yeah, he absolutely is, like when he first meets you." And CB's like, "Not unlike the greatest pilot in the galaxy." And Kaz goes, "Exactly. Just like the greatest pilot in the galaxy thing. Hey, wait, did BB-8 tell you about that?" And then they like you don't even have a moment to like register it because then they run into the Niktos, and there's like these little great moments, like those little things. There's a lot of small, well-crafted moments. Not unlike OP Pit getting back his floor scrubber.
Right.
I do feel like you have to have seen the rest of the series for a lot of this stuff to kind of register, because otherwise it's just kind of otherwise it's just kind of like, you know, another episode. Shit, what else do I got?
So at the end, Nina jumps to hyperspace and gets out of there. We get this little threat from Pyre and Tierney, but do you think, with all of that said, Nina will come back? Yeah.
Normally, that is my question to you. And honestly, with only like 14 episodes left of this series in general, I highly doubt it.
It's a weird place to leave things here. I have a feeling she'll be back.
That's interesting, because I feel like 2 episodes ago, if the question would have been flip-flop and I'd be asking you, you'd be like, fuck no, it ain't happen. Nope.
They addressed it way too much for her to disappear forever. Or she would have died or something.
I like your optimism.
But
I am not convinced.
It's mainly because we get that extra little conversation between Tierney and Pyre that, I don't know. It's a weird extra like throwaway line where it's like, if we should ever cross paths with her again, we'll be sure to execute her.
And it's a weird back and forth thing, because we only see Tierney and Pyre a couple of times in this episode.
Right.
And Nina calls Pyre, not Tierney. And the way that communication in this universe works, in my understanding, is that you can call someone directly.
Right.
It's not like she called the ship and Pyre answered. Like, she called Pyre. Right. And she says, hey, Pyre, like, the thing is done. And he's like, thank you, you've been a good asset. The credits have been transferred to your account. And he calls her the engineer. Right.
Yes, yeah.
And then she blasts off. She has an aside and apologizes to Neeku and says, I hope you understood what I told you, and then blast off into hyperspace. And then Pyre turns around and he's like, hey, I didn't think that your spy was going to work, but she seems to be doing well. And Tierney's all like smug, like, oh, don't question my authority, right? And then later, when the Colossus is able to jump to hyperspace and the attack on the Colossus fails, Pyre turns around and he like smugly says, basically, I told you so. And then Tierney's the one that's like, oh, blah, 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 whatever. I don't remember what she says. So obviously, blah, 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 whatever is a paraphrase. But, you know, she gets a little defensive or whatnot. And that's when she says, well, if we ever cross paths with the engineer again, execute her. And in the Buckets Tidbits or whatever I was reading, there was like something about how Pyre didn't trust the engineer and he had made it known to Tierney, and like Tierney was sticking her neck out on the line. And that doesn't come across in the episode. No. But it's this weird back and forth where, I don't know, like Pyre seems to trust her and then not trust her, and then he's like, I told you so, and Tierney's like, oh, let's kill her. Like, it doesn't seem to all add up. It seems there's something missing out of that. But whether or not she's coming back, I would hope so. In what form, I'm not really sure. Like, is she going to come back to help the Colossus, or is somebody just going to run into her somewhere down the line in the story? I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know either. My guess is she'll be back, but I agree. I can't predict in what capacity.
I can't predict how she would fit into a later storyline.
I feel like there'll be some remorse. She'll help. She'll track him down again, something like that. I don't know. Neeku will have his love interest back, blah, blah, blah. Move on, right?
Yeah. How do you feel about Neeku and Kaz's talk of friends at the end?
It was fine. Like,
I,
again, it's such a weird. We get tonal shifts in here, so I agree. It's that last chat between Pyre and Tyranny felt so weird, and then we cut into this chat that's happening as they're walking through the well-lit marketplace.
yeah, I like how what'd you call it, a prologue?
Epilogue.
An epilogue.
Yeah,
Prologue would be at the beginning. That totally makes sense. Yeah, I like how you called it like an epilogue. And I thought it was really funny. Okay, one thing I didn't like is the bestest friend line.
Yeah.
Like, you're not my best friend, you're my bestest friend. Like, that's too American contemporary language.
Yeah.
For me.
I understand what you're saying. To me, it was just that this conversation kind of just lingered a little too long. Like, they should have cleaned up the bit with Pyre and Tyranny a bit, and then maybe through them kind of lay down some, more track or foreshadowing for things to come.
Mm-hmm.
Before
what if they just flip-flop these scenes? Would that help?
Not really, just because I still don't feel like we get much out of the Kaz and Neeku scene that couldn't have been said in about half the time.
Okay.
It's a pacing issue with both.
Okay.
I think it would have helped if we ended with Pyre and Tyranny rather than Kaz and Neeku, but I think that's a personal, subjective choice on my end.
That's what we're here for.
Right. But I think with this very, very final scene, I agree. It's the language, it's the back and forth banter, it's the fact that they're walking off into like the sunset rather than kind of. To me, the show shouldn't have like a fade out. It should have like one line and then fanfare.
Like a cue loud music.
Cue loud music, right?
But they don't.
They don't. It's always some sort of like fading audio cross dissolving into other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
I will say I do like the final line of dialogue. I don't like the bestest friend thing. But Kaz says, "Oh, your bestest friend, huh? So let me ask you, besides me, do you have any other friends?" And Neeku says, "Well, there's a chair that I am particularly fond of. And Buggles, I like Buggles. And oh yes, Bebo. I wonder what Bebo's up to." And that's just like a nice little callback to the episode Bebo,
Right.
That was a nice way for that conversation to end. I don't know that it was a nice way for the episode itself to end.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
That's why I was suggesting that we like wrap up the friendship of Kaz and Neeku, and then like we get to the heart of this issue, and that's the engineer and her betrayal of really everyone in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think the other thing that's kind of bothering me too is, again, I'm going to get back into this issue, is that I don't know what the story for this whole season is. Is it really just going to be Colossus on the run this whole season, right?
Man, that's the way it started.
Right. And
it's like Colossus in peril, Colossus in need of supplies, Colossus in peril, Colossus in need of supplies.
And then Colossus runs away one more time here. It makes the jump to hyperspace. I hope they have plenty of coaxium around.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works anymore. I have no idea what the limits of coaxium are.
Like how many hyperspace jumps you get?
Yeah, how many jumps? What's the jumps per gallon here, right?
Now, I guess there is a question of that I hadn't really thought of before, but does the Millennium Falcon get the same number of hyperspace jumps out of a unit of coaxium that the Colossus does? Because the Colossus is much bigger.
Also, extending that question, would Death Star or Starkiller therefore be the biggest users of coaxium, if not based on a single unit of coaxium being equivalent amongst all of them.
Right. Is it mass driven or is it unit driven? Like how many times you use it?
Right.
That's a good question.
So, and then like how does that scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if Millennium Falcon needs like a quarter unit of coaxium, say Colossus needs 2, does Starkiller base need like 55?
Well, Colossus clearly needs fewer than 1.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a speed thing. I'm not really sure because in Solo, a Star Wars story, don't they drop like a drip of pure coaxium into is it the hyperdrive core or is it like just the engine core and that's why they like blast out of the maw? Isn't that
right? I'm trying to remember now, and I can't remember that detail.
This is questionable.
Yes. So I just have many questions about coaxium still.
Yep.
Because we keep depending on this weird little plot-driven item, coaxium.
Fuel is the new thing.
Right.
Should be called Fuel Wars, not Star Wars.
Basically, just give me a fully Mad Maxed out version of Star Wars, please. Definitely, please.
We got the slow burn of the Mad Maxed out Star Wars is
yes,
the Disney
very
era.
much.
I think is what's going on here.
Very much so. But yeah, so that's what I got for.
I got one other question for you before we get into our one-word review and our final judgment of this thing, and that is, where does the Colossus jump? Like, do they have an intended target in mind? Like when they
That's
left,
a good question.
When they left Castellan,
yes,
it was. And I will say it was all on Neeku, like last minute, repairing the shit and getting the hyperdrive up and running and doing all this stuff. But the Colossus is under attack by the First Order, and it's a surprise attack because they did not know that the First Order was coming. I've brought up many times the length of travel in hyperspace. And this show specifically, and maybe even just the Disney era, is shortening the time span that it takes to go from one place to another.
For sure, yes.
Because Nina radios out her location, and is it on her comm? Is it on her comm that she gets like a message from Pyre, or is Sonara on the bridge of her ship or something that's like,
yeah, I think it's on the bridge of the ship.
Your coordinates are noted. We are on our way, and it's very quickly that they're there. Like,
yeah, it's pretty much like minutes later.
If that, like Nina is still running to her ship, hasn't even got there yet. Right,
exactly.
So near instantaneous. It's very fast. But so surprise attack.
Yep.
They send out 10 TIE fighters. Seems like a shockingly low number for wanting to destroy the Colossus. I did kind of expect Tam to like be in one of those.
I thought she would show up too. It's really odd that we got a Star Destroyer, but no Tam.
Right. And we know it's the one that she's on because she's on the Star Destroyer with Pyre and Tyranny. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, there's Pandemonium and another, like our third montage of fixing shit or running around or whatever. And Neeku and Kaz both prove to be competent in what they're doing.
For sure. Yes.
They're well accomplished. They got their shit done quickly and without too much arm flailing and whatnot. And boom, they're able to, like, all systems go, and Doze is like, hit it, and man, they jump to hyperspace and they're gone.
Yep.
I guess that Doza and what's this droid's name? L3? Is that right?
4D.
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 Yeah, L3 is from Solo.
Solo,
right?
Yep.
Yep, got that one wrong. Or is she L7? L3? Something.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so they jump to hyperspace, and I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like, do they have a destination? If they do, because they were at Dakar, and I'm assuming they're still in the Dakar system.
Right.
I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, because like we had the weird excursions with the planets,
with the ice, with the ice moon
thing. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's in the Dakar system.
Right.
Like, are they just making random jumps? It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's a weird roundabout system they got going on.
I don't think that there needs to be dialogue like devoted to this, of like where they're going or whether they're. I don't know. Maybe there does.
I just hope there's a plan, right? I just hope there's some sort of plan, and I mean this from both in universe perspective and also from a script perspective at this point,
right?
Because we're on the 5th episode. Sometimes
the overall plan seems a little ambling.
Yeah, that's a good word. We've been meandering for a while. This one not as much, but we're still kind of, details are sparse, right? Overall plot development we're making little tiny steps rather than taking full steps, right?
Yeah.
We haven't really quite gotten to stride here. So
that being said, do you got any more tidbits of info, insights, or anything for the main portion of this episode?
No, I think this is a good lead into just kind of throwing our final thoughts out there.
Sure.
And that one word. Yeah. Do you have a one word? Because
I do.
I'm trying to think of one right now.
Mine is naive.
Okay.
And the reason that I decided on this is because, I don't know, kind of talking about this, I would have called it like Neekuian, like of a Neeku-based perspective. It really does feel like his personality comes through on this episode, which surprised me that I thought of that like as we were talking about this. But just like the naivete of like the main people, the main strong leaders of the Star Wars resistance up to this point, which have been Yeager, which have been Doza, and like they clashed together, they butted heads and they worked their piece, and now for this episode, maybe last week, they've just kind of been, I don't want to say like complacent, but they haven't been as strong of characters, right? And especially in this one, with Sonara being able to, I mean, the things that she says about Nina, she's like, hey, wait, she's supposed to be a great engineer. Why can't she fix her own ship? Why is she conveniently out here? Everybody just believes what she's saying about this power draw. Nobody's looking into it. She's the one that's been fucking with the power, not everybody else.
Right.
And everybody else just goes along with it. And is just kind of naive on everybody's part, aside from, like, this is a Neeku story, which is nice. I really like that because I really like Neeku as a character.
Right.
But everybody else, sans Sonara, just kind of goes along with whatever.
Yeah, branching off of that, I think I would say, like, this episode's confused.
Okay.
That would be kind of the approach I have, where I agree with you on pretty much all of that.
Sure.
But like the identity from that of this episode just gets muddled and confused, right? Where it kind of wants to have it both ways,
Right.
It's like, oh, it's an episode about friendship, but then betrayal. And even though that was like the running theme of Tam and Kaz, we kind of forgot about that because now we're introducing this new element to it.
And we've
for
had it with
Neeku.
Hype and Tam, and
Right.
and yeah, and
So
we've had it with Sonara and Kaz, and we've had
exactly. It's been this like ongoing running theme. So at this point, like I will say I still overall enjoyed this episode.
Is that a thumbs up for you?
I'm gonna give this a thumbs up.
Okay.
This was a decent enough episode. I was entertained by it enough. I was never bored by this episode. But I do feel like this script needed tidying up just a bit.
Yeah, there's a couple things that are questionable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give this one a thumbs up as well. And earlier when I was explaining why I picked Naive as my one-word review, and, I mentioned Neekuian as an adjective, I suppose. It was only through talking about this that I more deeply recognized Neeku as like the heart of this, as far as the personality of this episode goes. And when I watched it the first time, I was like, thumbs up. When I watched it the second time, I was like, ooh, thumbs down, man.
Yeah.
And I think that in isolation of just this episode, it's a thumbs down. But in the collection of the series, it's a thumbs up.
I feel the same way. Yeah, I agree. I think it's just because this episode finally kind of does build off of the rest of the series really well.
Right.
And it's less of a sidestep versus the last two episodes. I think it's in contrast to the last two episodes.
Right.
That I at least feel like the Colossus itself is in some sort of danger. There are stakes here that feel more pertinent than... Okay, yes, there was an episode dealing with people growing hungry on the Colossus, but they approached it in such a weird way that made the stakes feel so low, right? And for this one, even though we're still dealing with this issue of shit going wrong on the Colossus, it just presented in a way that, it moved along all right. And I felt like everybody was concerned in their own way to some general degree. At least the major players, Kaz and Doza and Yeager, Neeku, right?
OP Pit.
Even Sonara, OP Pit.
Yep.
And the fact
Kragan
that...
and the Pirates, really, because
they get into it too, yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's a moment in time
cool.
where Doza's like, nope, fuck him, get him off my ship.
Mm-hmm. And Kaz is like, hold up, I'll investigate. Let's double check, right? And I kind of appreciate that. And seeing the relationship of everybody kind of more closely here, even though we've just getting little glances of it, and this really is still just another little glance at it. Again, I'm like, as I mentioned before, this show, this season especially, is taking tiny little baby steps, but we haven't gotten a full stride.
I think this is also the beginning of the development that you expected to see out of Kaz midway through last season.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
This
absolutely
feels like a mid-season 1 episode.
Yes. And I think that's what is at least pointing my thumb up in this episode. Like the characterizations of everybody I feel are definitely agreeable, right? Even Neeku, I gelled with the humor in this episode for sure. Whereas, me, like for the most part, a lot of the humor I get really turned off by on this show. But for the most part, there are still a few things that didn't land with me at all. But for the most part, I think you and I, anything you kind of mentioned, I was kind of down for. Except, it's that last scene. Any of the stuff in that last scene I was kind of over it by that point, right?
Okay.
But yeah, there's a character basis here that kind of at least pulled me along a lot more versus the last two episodes especially. But yeah, overall, like if I was just sitting back and just watching this episode, like it was a fine episode that flowed pretty well, right? So
yeah,
thumbs up, Yeah, not a big thumbs up, but thumbs up.
Well, so overall this week we had 2 thumbs up on a naive, confused episode.
Yeah, I feel like this review is confused and naive.
It is what it is, man.
We're saying one thing and we're like, yeah, sure, thumbs up.
Yeah, it kind of personifies this episode in general. So
right. Again, it's it's right there in the middle, but for me it's going up. So.
Yeah, I would say that being said, go back and rewatch The Engineer. It's worth a rewatch. And next week we have an episode called From Beneath. So we'll see what's going on with that. But you know what? Might not be next week. Maybe we can.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe we can get some of these out
based on our schedules here. Yeah.
A little more quickly or further apart. We're a little behind, but we're doing what we can. So yeah, we'll go from there.
But as always, we want to thank Kevin at They Call Me K-Dub for putting together the artwork that you see on our wherever you're downloading this. Also, Lindsay at strangefantasymusic@gmail.com. She put together the jingle at the beginning and end. And I still have not committed to memory who is our fellow for the web designer.
At Blue the Beard on Twitter.
The Beard. Yep. So he put together our website. Until then, you can also visit that website at notthenerds.com. That would be the place to go. All the YouTube links populate there. But, wherever you're listening to us, iTunes, or it's not iTunes anymore. It's its own podcast thing. It's just a force of habit at this point. But Apple has spun it off into its own thing. Stitcher, Google Play. Give us a like, thumbs up. Review.
We got a really swell review on Apple Podcast, and it's Clone Wars specific. So I've been holding off reading that one until we do record another Clone Wars episode. And I do kind of feel bad that it's been a while, and it was kind of a little bit from when that review popped up to when I saw it. But yeah, I'll cover that one in the next Clone Wars episode. And, if you want your review read by us, by me, whatever, go ahead and throw one out there and get your words read live over the internet, recorded for a later date.
Yeah, live? Yeah. Live by us.
Live by us.
Live by us.
Recorded until then, released later by you.
Right. Till then, I've been Lorenzo Fon.
Kevin Horde here.
These aren't the nerds you're looking for.
Bye-bye.